So Chad, do you have a new title?
Editorial director for Baker Books.
Is that new?
That's been my role for about 3 years.
Okay, and is that, how does the hierarchy inside of the publishing house work? Don't laugh.
I'm right below the viceroy of
India,
Yeah,
who doesn't
right.
exist anymore.
Right.
How does one think about their career inside of publishing? Like, you are an acquisitions person, and then you.
Well, I'll tell you what my career has been. I was a project editor. The project editors oversee copy editing and proofreading, and then I was an acquisitions editor. Acquisitions editors obviously are acquiring manuscripts, and then now I'm editorial director. I still do a lot of acquisitions.
Right.
Then my boss is the publisher,
Okay.
and the publisher's boss is the president. So,
Okay.
so that's how it works. That's the editorial track.
What are you? Is there more than one editorial director?
Oh yes, because we have different divisions. So there's an editorial director for each division.
And your division is?
The Baker Books division.
And is there a specific focus inside Baker Books?
Yes.
That you are editorializing around?
Yes.
Which is?
We serve the church, both lay folks and pastors, nonfiction only.
Okay.
What we publish most is, the broad term is Christian living.
Right.
But we also do books for, like I said, for pastors. We call them professional books, and also reference works, trade reference works.
Right. So you and I have had a unique opportunity to work together, and I wanted to share some of that for the sake of people who are wondering, like, what happens when things don't work out, like the book isn't a success, right?
Right.
Because as an author, of course, I have certain feelings about it, and I've run into authors who feel like it's the publisher didn't do something and all that. I don't happen to feel that way in this case, but I do hear that, and I also, I don't know how authors feel about, like, the current economic model is you advance a bunch of money, and then you the publisher makes a bet that X will happen, and you'll at least recoup that money, right? So in our case, that has not happened.
Right.
In this book that we did, and we've done it. We've actually tried to revisit the book twice.
Right.
And so, and for me, I wanted to share my feelings about that as an author.
Good.
Because I don't like that feeling. I actually wish the economic model worked more pragmatically, where publishers approach and said, "We got an idea, let's. We're not giving you any money. Write the book. We'll do the rest of the thing we do, and we'll split it." Right? I don't know how the numbers would work for a publisher in that regard, but there's no risk on their part. Other than the investment they make in the people power of getting the product out the door, but there's in that bet to the author up front. I think it would help eliminate a number of authors who think that that's the magic they're going to get, because I don't personally. I'm sure the model was based at one point on it being enough money for people to live on while they wrote. I guess that's where that came from.
Maybe.
In our case, there were 3 of us writing this book, so the money was like, I don't know. I mean, I don't think of it as big money. I mean, it is a lot of money. It's real money, but it's not something that, like, impacts my life profoundly. I don't write for money. I haven't made enough. I haven't had a bestseller, so I've never had the experience of, like, getting large checks of, like, oh wow, $50,000 to me, like,
Right.
like I get $500 and I go, like, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So there's that whole thing, and plus and plus when you become friends with the person that you've worked with, I don't like feeling like I ripped these people off, like I didn't deliver, and in spite of the fact that I feel like I tried as hard as I could to market it, et cetera, and I pay attention to that stuff more than most people.
Sure.
So that was my experience with the book. The Outsider Interviews is what we were working on. If you want to buy it still, it's still, I think, it may still be available.
It's still in print.
Okay, so, and I want to know, I want 2 things. If I'm the only person this has ever happened to, right, the only person you've ever had this experience with, I'd like to know I'm not. Please tell me. The second one is, what's it like from the publisher's side of things? And then what does it tell you about the market, like the unpredictability or the not knowing, or I don't know if you heard Steve from Multnomah say, you know, the last story tells about the book he said no to, and it was on the New York Times in 60
right.
weeks. You know,
Yeah.
those are always the stories we hear.
Yeah, right.
We don't hear the story about the other 95%.
That's right. Which is to say, yours is not the only one. In fact, the story you just recounted is more the norm. You know, the vast majority of books that get published don't end up recouping.
What percentage of books would that be?
I don't know. Off the top of my
How
head.
many books will you acquire, I should say, maybe through the editorial, will Baker acquire in a season or put on their list?
Well, our goal is to acquire 50 new books a year for the Baker Books division.
Got it.
And we end up publishing 70 with all the repacks, roughly.
And you go into that knowing that what percentage of those books are not going to probably recoup their advance?
Again, I don't keep tabs on the percentages, but it's certainly the majority.
Like more than half?
Oh yes, that don't hit their projections.
So okay, so help us understand the economic.
And as we always say in the publishing house, you know, when we make a projection, we know only one thing about it: it's wrong. It's either too high or it's too low.
Okay, all right.
So I mean, we just go into it with that expectation.
So you know, while people sort of think of publishing houses kind of like banks or accountants, it's like this very serious thing. It's like it's a very high risk business, in fact.
It is.
And so
capital intensive.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit, because I don't think people get this part about, like, you're making a bet. So like I've not been privileged to be in a business where I had the money to place a bet knowing that 70% of what I'm going to lose money on, but the other 30 I'm going to make it on, or the other 20, I bet it's not even 20, maybe between 20 and 30% of the list probably end up becoming profitable for your business.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we depend so much on our backlist. You know, we've been publishing since 1939.
Right.
So that gives us, you know, some base to work from. That gives us some kind of a safety net.
Right.
And we've been operating profitably for many, many years now. So, I mean, I suppose if we went several years without making a profit, we all would start going, you know, what's up? What do we do? But you're right. It's a capital-intensive business. It takes a lot of upfront expense, and you hope to get it back on the back end.
And what happens to your reputation internally in a company when you've made, I mean, you can only be allowed to make so many bets before somebody notices, like, you're not hitting any singles here, dude. Like, what's going on? How does that affect somebody's career?
Well, it would affect one's career if he or she had a string of miss and never hit. But here's the thing about that. We make publishing decisions as a collective. So the acquisitions editor advocates for a project.
Right.
But we make decisions. When we make decisions, it's sales, marketing, publicity, and editorial.
Yeah.
So we all go into a project like Outsider Interviews with our eyes wide open. We know what this is. We all see something. We've come to some kind of consensus around it. So if it doesn't work out, you know, it's not any one person's fault.
Right.
So I guess I'm backpedaling a little bit. I do think an editor can get a reputation, but I think it's more likely to happen on the front end as an editor is bringing things into Pubboard, than it is to happen on the back end as books get published.
How's it feel emotionally?
It's hard. We get grumpy and cranky around.
Must get sad.
And how when books don't hit their projections, and we have these book performance review meetings where we look at a book's 12-month performance and we assess it.
Yeah.
And sometimes those meetings are a lot of fun. Sometimes they're not as much fun. Yeah, we get mopey.
Well, and here, let's just to be frank. Be frank. You took our book, and we said no. Let's go for round 2, and you guys agreed to go paperback.
Well, that was because the first round was a very expensive package. It was a hardcover. It had a DVD inside it, and we thought maybe the price point's the issue. We all really believed that the Outsider Interviews was an interesting concept. But you know, this is publishing. For every one of these, well, I shouldn't say for everyone, but while you do have these failures, you also have these successes that you weren't expecting, and that's what keeps it interesting.
Tell me about a success that happened that you didn't anticipate in the last year.
Well, okay, so the one that comes immediately to mind is a book we published by Warren Wiersbe called 50 People Every Christian Should Know.
Wow.
It was largely repackaged.
Do people still know his name?
Oh yes,
Okay,
yeah.
incredible.
A lot of people apparently.
Isn't that incredible?
That book has sold almost 100,000 copies. It might be 100,000 by now.
Wow. In a year or two?
No, it's been a few years.
Okay,
but
that's still
it's
very,
a steady,
very powerful.
steady
Yeah.
seller for us. And we, you know, it was largely repackaged materials. He had done two books before. They were bio sketches, and 48 of them. And he told me, he said, why don't you consider repackaging that? And I put them together. I realized we have 48. If he does two more, we'll get to 50. That sounds like a good number.
Yeah.
And so we did 50 people every Christian should know, and off it went, and off it keeps going.
And so that was a matter of repackaging an idea.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So that fascinates me about the packaging and distribution part. I think I would like you to address this issue as it relates to artists, writers, about what I would say now, ideas are overestimated and distribution and packaging is underestimated in terms of getting to market.
So you're saying packaging is more important than we...
Bad ideas get to market.
Sure.
Good ideas, if there doesn't mean they're going to get to market. Just artists tend to be in love with their ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Like God told me to do this. In our circles, it'd be that, like, or I'll die if I can't get published, or the world doesn't blah blah blah. There's all that sort of drama that goes into it, and it's kind of like then it's on you to like see the light and get everybody to like buy this thing. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
where I'm fascinated just by the sheer power of distribution, of a distribution market and packaging and people that know how to get an idea to a group of people that want to actually write checks for it. So I just think it's an interesting reality to get into.
And, I mean, I guess a good example of that is when it comes to titling. You know, the right title, you talked about this earlier today, the right title makes all the difference in the world. So, whatever those two books were that Warren Wiersbe originally, the titles under which those books were originally published, they didn't sell anything like 50 people. So for some reason, 50 people every Christian should know that struck a nerve.
Why?
That got an audience.
Tell me why you think that struck. I mean, I could make a couple comments, but I mean, you repackaged it, put a title on it.
I think it makes a promise. I mean, people study this, right? What makes good sell copy? Michael Hyatt talks a lot about Garfunkel's book, something like Headlines That Will Make You Rich or something like that. And people study what is it in a title that makes it resonate, with people, or what is it in sell copy that makes it resonate. I think it has to do with a lot of different things: promise, felt need, an audience that exists for what it's pitching, etc.
Yeah.
So
there's there's a fair amount of not knowing what.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, too much, really.
Well, I mean, it's a fascinating. I'm currently reading through a book called Being Wrong by Catherine Schultz, and it's really about the history of wrongness and how persistent it is in human history. How we don't like to know that, because the correct answer to many, many questions actually is, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the correct answer, but it's kind of a boring answer, and it's not the one people want to hear. They want to know what's your best guess. I can give you my best guess.
Yeah.
But the true answer is there's many, many things I don't know.
Yeah.
So when you're selling stuff, but when there's something about money that makes it more important and critical that we place a better guess on this thing, and I think that it's very helpful for writers to understand the dilemma or the risks that publishers are taking to kind of make them human. Like these are real people making these decisions, and and they're actually taking a significant risk.
Yes.
Unlike this idea about that we get the impression about they're sort of removed from the process, not paying attention, all that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's natural to have sympathy for publishers, because publishers are
apparently not nowadays.
Are companies that bring in millions of dollars of revenue if they're good, and authors have this idea. So
yeah, they're struggling.
I mean, it would be like cheering for Goliath in the David and Goliath story. That's no fun. So I'm not looking for people to have pity for us. And let's face it. I mean, it's for as tumultuous as things are right now, it remains I think, a relatively healthy business.
Yeah.
And for all the times we fail, we do succeed. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in business.
Of course.
And it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's a lot
Do
of
you
fun
ever
to bring
publish
these
people
ideas.
again that had a flop?
Sure. Yeah.
Because that's the part I
mean,
could
it's
never
harder.
figure out. Of course.
It's harder to get excited when you have a track record like that.
Yeah.
But look, I mean, Ted Dekker, as he was talking about earlier today, it's a great story.
Yeah.
First 3 novels nobody noticed, and then it hits. I mean, ask anybody who's done something great if they have experience trying something over and over again until it hits,
right.
and they all do.
Yeah.
So.
Well, what do you think about the economic model? What do you think, is it going to remain as is, where the advances are covered and paid out, just get smaller, lower the exposure for the company? Or what about the idea of just no money up front, split the difference? Do you have a different split on the backside? Is that never discussed or talked about?
Oh yeah, I think it does happen here and there. It's rare, but I do think it happens here and there. It's all about supply and demand. It's about what our competitors are doing, and while the format in which books are read in is changing, the economics haven't changed substantively. And I've been in this now for going on over 12 years now at Baker. Mm-hmm. The fact that we pay a royalty for ebooks, okay, that's different. But
I don't understand that. What do you mean? You pay a royalty for ebooks?
Ebooks that get sold.
Right.
So we paid you when your ebook sold. We paid you 25%. I'm sure.
Like
that's
that. Okay.
That's the industry standard. That's a tweak that's changed, and we've looked at how that affects our profit and loss statements.
Right.
But substantially, the economics of it, I don't think have changed terribly much. Mm-hmm. It's by and large the same as it was 12 years ago when I started.
So it sounds like you're saying that if you had competitors that if you went for a no money down offer to an author and you had competitors that were offering them in advance, then that would put you out of the market for grabbing their attention, even if you offered a bigger percentage split on the sales.
It would depend on the author, I guess. I mean, if we offered a 50% royalty and no advance, and another company offered, say a $30,000 advance with an 18% or 20% royalty, it just so much. Most authors I work with, it really isn't all about the money. There are a lot of
there's not
factors.
enough for most of us. There's not enough money in it.
Right.
Like, yes, if you're selling 100,000 copies and you're going to make, like I tell people, if you start selling between 50 and 100,000 books, you'll probably see a check that you'll go like, wow, because your advance will be satisfied up to that point. And most people aren't selling at that level.
Right. That's true.
And so given that, the idea of going into this for money, this is really, this is an opportunity to get your idea out there. And really, what people pay for in the marketplace is for talking. That's what people pay for. That's where they pay a premium.
That's why I'm expecting a check after this.
You're going to get a big one, yeah. Or at least a Diet Coke or something. So that really is what writing does for, I'd say, for even the moderate range people, that are in public. The people that love writing, that want to have a voice, that becomes, I think, very, it's more difficult for them to figure out, like, why am I, it literally is a work of love.
Right.
At that point,
Yeah, the number of people who can do this full time it's a very small number.
Yeah.
I think most people, and this is true on the publishing side, the agenting side, and the author side. I don't think you go into this for the money. You go into it because you love ideas. You love books, you love spreading ideas, you love hearing ideas, you love seeing an idea sort of go viral. That's why we're all in this, I hope.
How do you, just final question here, how do you, along those lines, split the difference or find the mix between the meaning, the mission, and the money? right? We have this mission, but we have to make money, and then, because that's the tension that's being managed.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the marketplace tells us whether or not we're serving it, and it tells us fairly immediately. You know, if we publish a book and it flops, then we know that book didn't. We were not serving the market the way it wants to be served. So that punishment is fairly immediate. On the other hand, if we publish a book that takes off, then the incentives are pretty immediate too. So I mean, that's how that works. I mean, the money is an indication of whether or not we're serving a need.